Welcome back to Z101.9 FM Next Gen Connect. And you're welcome to our next segment, which is our interview segment. We bring you this every time. And today we have a special guest. And our topic is exploring how youth can thrive in the global market. And we have a global person to have this conversation with. We're having a conversation with Mariana Camacho Perez, originally from Mexico, but she works in Germany as a creative management professional. You're welcome, Mariana.
Thank you for having me, Oliver.
I mean, this is like a full circle moment because I've known you for God knows how long. We worked together, and then you're here in Ghana. And as a young person, I would like you to share your experience with the young people in Ghana to kind of, so that we can have a global perspective to how young people can find opportunities worldwide. So you're welcome, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Of course. So as you already said, I'm originally from Mexico. I am 22 years old, and I moved to Germany to study my undergraduate degree in creative industries management. And from there, I have had a lot of opportunities that I'm really thankful for, beginning with working with you. Working with you in the audiobook company. Then, of course, I also worked in film festivals in Berlin. I've worked in art galleries. I've worked in almost all the creative industry so far, which is something that I've really appreciated and something that I really like to learn more from, because of course there's always room to learn, there's always room to grow. So my next steps in my career is I'm gonna do my master's, and I'm with the goal to open more of these opportunities, learn more.
Amazing. I mean, I think you said a lot of things in a short period, and I want us to break it down a little bit to go more into details. You mentioned that you've worked in film festivals, you've worked in a global audiobook company, you've worked in a lot of creative industries, and you're just 22. And I mean, in Africa or in Ghana, a 22-year-old is now about figuring out their lives, figuring out about what they really want to do in life. And as a young person, you've been able to do so much. So I want us to unpack it a little bit. Run us from your journey from Mexico as a young person, as a high school graduate. How was your thinking? What were you thinking about before you transitioned into school in Germany? How did you even find these opportunities for you to even apply to them? Tell us about it.
Of course. Actually, something that a lot of people don't know is the fact that my international journey began a little bit before I moved to Germany. I was actually able to move to Spain for 2 years with my mom.
Wow.
Yeah, so that opened a lot of doors, because as soon as you step out of your comfort zone, you realize that there's a sea of opportunities and the world is there to make it your own, basically.
Wow.
Yeah, so the main reason why I went to Germany is because I had been studying German for a while, so I thought that it was a very nice step to improve my knowledge on the culture and everything, because one of the main things that I believe opens doors for you is understanding different cultures and understanding different stories, because there's very different perspectives in ways to see the world and life overall, right? So the main way that I have been able to find opportunities actually is, you mentioned it earlier, through networking. Your network is your net worth, as you said.
Yes.
Right? So definitely expanding my horizons and meeting more international people is a reason why I've been able to travel, to learn, and to work in so many different industries at such a young age, because I know that it is not something very common, especially because when I first arrived to Germany, one of my first jobs was actually at a German bank. And at that point, I didn't even know German properly. Like, I could speak it, but conversationally and not in a professional way. And then I was able to join this bank because a professor recommended me, for this project.
And so the network part, right?
Seriously, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Putting yourself out there more than anything.
I mean, I hear you when you say putting yourself out there, but a lot of people, when you try to put yourself out there too much, people kind of judge you and say, oh, this guy or this girl is always like trying to... How have you handled that? Is that even the case globally? or like from where you are from, are people like judgmental or will say, oh, why are you everywhere at every time? But they don't see the end goal of you trying to find opportunities. Walk us through that journey for you and mentally how you handle that.
Of course, I mean, I think it is something globally common that people are judgmental, and you're gonna get a lot of backlash for some of the decisions you make, especially if you make them as an international person, because of course, once you go abroad, you are judged a bit differently than if someone is from that specific country. You know, you are held to what I consider like a higher standard, because you have to prove that you're there to provide something. You're able to, that you're able to bring in skills that they might not have, you know, or knowledge, and that you're there to absorb the culture. That was one of the main shocks that I had, especially when I started working in the German bank. You know, it's like, what is this Mexican girl that barely speaks German doing working in this project in the first
legitimacy,
place,
right? You need to always try to prove yourself beyond what you are to kind of get legitimacy. And I kind of understand. So let's backtrack a little bit, right? You find opportunities through network, and that's recommendation from professors. But is there a certain way that you need to be? Is there a certain mindset that you need to have, like a go-getter? Is there certain books you need to read? As a young person, how do you position yourself even to get recommendations? Even before the networking, what should you do as a young person to have global opportunity? Let me put it that way. What mindset do you have to have? What kind of books do you have to read, if there are? What kind of situation do you have to be in? Do you have to have a certain amount of money in your bank account? Like, walk me through getting yourself ready to take that journey. Yeah.
Of course. I mean, in my case, I didn't start off by reading books and everything. Like, I mean, when I mean books, I mean self-development books, because I know that a lot of people recommend those as a first step to opening your mindset to becoming more international. But what I've considered to be the best pathway is to actually find a way to enjoy it. Because a lot of people, I mean, I'm not particularly super extroverted, right? If you put me with people that I might not know, I might not be the first one to say hello or to start the conversation, right? But finding a way to enjoy all that, finding a way that fits your path is what's most important in my opinion, right? Yeah, because of course we all have different access to economic ways of doing certain things. We might not have this, like the language paths that we need to take. We might not have all the skills necessary to follow a specific way of doing stuff. But with learning more, with being able to enjoy the process of learning, enjoy the process of failing, because that will come a lot, you know. If you enjoy the process of failing and keep trying, is the best way to like start off, right? So of course there's also this thing that a lot of young people don't know, that there are so many ways to fund your studies abroad, to fund your studies in your own home country. Like, there's so many options, there's so many opportunities, which is why I really like your show, the fact that you're bringing these opportunities to young people. Yes. Because even if you don't get like the scholarship that you want, you're already starting to build your profile to keep applying to scholarships, and there might be an opportunity that is just right for you, that will get you on your way and be a more global person because of it.
I want to piggyback on something you mentioned, rejections and failure as a young person. And some people can't handle rejections at all. You know, as young people, it breaks them. How have you been able to handle? I mean, I have also lived in Germany, and I know how it feels searching for opportunities, searching for jobs, the kind of rejections you receive. How have you been able to manage that amidst also trying to get real opportunities coming to you, and then also battling with rejections after rejections?
Yeah, it also ties to what we were talking about, like how do we handle all the criticism, right? Because it not only comes from the people in the country that you're trying to live in, but it also comes from your own home, and it comes from your family sometimes. And my main way of handling everything was to remind myself of the value that I have, you know, because I know that there's more people in Germany, foreigners that speak better German than I do, that they work in marketing and have worked in marketing longer than I have, that have worked in specific things, that have had their own film festivals before even beginning their undergraduate degree. Like, I know that there's people that are more, let's say, well-rounded than I am. But that does not mean that I don't bring value. That doesn't mean that I don't have something to contribute. And the main thing that a young person can have is that openness to grow, learn, and explore different things. You know, I like doing this really bad joke with my mom, which is the fact that as a young person, you don't have a specific pathway or something urgent that you need to address, right?
Yeah.
The fact that you're young gives you the immense opportunities. You know, you're able to move abroad, you're able to move to another city, you're able to start a new degree, you know, you're able to do so many things because it's the age for exploring, you know. And the best way to handle all that backlash is know that you're doing it for you. You're doing it for your career, for your pathway, your life, you know.
Amazing. I'm really proud of you because at a young age, you've been able to travel from your home country, and not just travel, being able to achieve your goals in a very stereotypically difficult country like Germany, right? And so I want to also unpack that a little bit more. Tell me about that decision for you as a young person to leave Mexico to Spain. I know you mentioned that you learned the German language and that's why you moved from Spain to Germany. But walk us through how someone like you globally in the world who has aspirations of traveling to find opportunities in another country, what should the person prepare for in that state, right? What should they do? I know you mentioned in terms of monetary stuff, there are like scholarships and stuff. Tell us how they can find such scholarships, like to travel, mobility scholarships. Tell us how you've done it and how people can do it.
Of course. I mean, nowadays we live in the digital era where everything is accessible from our own phones, right? Yeah. So a lot of the opportunities, a lot of the doors that I have been able to open have been through social media, and especially the social media of the embassies of the different countries around the world, you know. So for example, my sister moved to Korea.
Oh, yeah. That's nice. Amazing.
Yeah. And my way of basically opening myself up to that culture has been through the Korean embassy in Germany, right? And since then, I have been able to see how many opportunities that they offer to all different kinds of people to go study in Korea, like the language or even the full degree.
Amazing.
Yeah, and everything. So it's even on social media, even something as your doom scroll hour a day, right, can be something productive into finding these sorts of things, because there's also a lot of accounts now of people that are trying to actively help other international people go and take, for example, the opportunity to be in a world forum or to participate in an internship and everything, right? So my main suggestion is to check social media, because that's also part of what I mean of making it enjoyable. You know, you're on social media, you're connecting and everything. It doesn't have to be like in a formal environment, like networking event, because I know that those can be very, very, very intimidating for young people sometimes. Absolutely, you know, because you're with people that have worked for 30 years in the industry, and you're trying to show them that you have the skills to provide something, right?
Amazing. Yeah. Okay, so let me also ask this question because it's been on my heart for a while. So you are a young person, and you are very young. You work in an industry where people are older, and then they kind of are more experienced. And then is that intimidating for you? And how do you handle that thing? You know, I don't know how to call it, but there's that thing that I'm a young person. I know my value, but then there's this 50-year-old that is way experienced and is more advanced. And you know, Gen Z, people say Gen Zs don't respect because they are going to tell it to you how it is, but then they also know their value. So how do you juxtapose that as a young person working in these high-level industries?
Of course. I mean, I think that will happen a lot to me, especially until I am the 50-year-old that does that, right?
Yes.
So it's definitely a lot of reminding myself that I got those jobs, I got those opportunities for a reason. They didn't pick me just out of the blue or like in a random way. There is some reassurance in knowing that you're getting these opportunities because you deserve these opportunities. You know, I've prepared for that. I have the knowledge to do this job. And yeah, there are some people that do consider that age is a very important factor when it comes to respect. You know, like the older generations might not respect the younger ones, but the younger ones need to respect the older generations. There's always this, you know, but it also ties a lot with the culture. You know, so if you understand that a lot of that is coming from a place of that they think they deserve the respect because of the effort they have put in, then it's also something very valuable to learn, you know, that they're showing you how to be proud of the work you've put in a sense, and don't take it personally. That's the main thing.
That's my goal in life. Anywhere I work, I don't take things personally, because at the end of the day, you do the work as a young person, you deliver, you go home, right? Okay. Let's go a little bit further into finding work opportunities or professional opportunities abroad as young people. I mean, as we've already said, preparing yourself and knowing your value is one thing, but then these opportunities must exist somewhere for you to apply to them, right? So walk us through how, after preparing yourself, how you actually found these opportunities. Were they like seminars that you attended and you saw the adverts? Like, for instance, in working in the German bank, were these vacancies you saw online and then you applied to? How do you find these opportunities as young people abroad? I know you've mentioned social media, but more professionally, how do you find these opportunities to apply to and finally get into them?
Of course. I mean, in my case, there has been different ways in which I've been able to do that. Like the main one has been through networking, because the same professor that recommended me for the bank position actually recommended me for another position for down the line, right?
Okay.
But the reason why he saw how interested I was in these kinds of positions was because I started going to conferences and networking events, and it was terrifying, of course. You know, there's, of course, all these people that have had decades in the industry, and a lot of them were only German speakers. So again, like my first year in Germany, I don't speak German in a professional level, and I'm going to this symposium that's for people and culture. And I'm just looking for other English-speaking or international people there that could guide me and to show me the ropes of what they're working in. And that actually helped a lot. That actually worked, because that's when I found out that even the global companies that advertise, like, we're international, but we need German speakers for Germany. Even those reserve some roles for these international people that don't necessarily speak German or don't necessarily have all the relevant skills. And that's how I got introduced to the working student positions, for example. That is literally positions made for students, and a lot of them for English-speaking students that want to get into the industry, you know. And since then, it was just me following these companies on their website, seeing their job postings and everything. And then you start to realize that you start knowing the people that actually work there. You know, you start building your network in a way, you know. And it was actually through LinkedIn that I was able to find like my job position in the company that we both worked in, where we met each other. And something that I didn't tell people was that I applied like 4 or 5 times to this company before I even got an offer for an interview, right? So it's still a lot of persistence, right? Like I follow the company. I made sure to always keep my CV in like the same wording that the job posting needed, because that's also something very important, that a lot of people just apply with any CV and apply like automatically. But people do that a lot, and then you have to make sure that whatever you're putting out fits the company, fits the language, and that's really valuable information. I hear you when you say working student positions, and here people may not relate to working student position because that system is not really available here. So I want to shift the question a little bit and ask about what is the relevance of volunteerism and then internships in your quest to being a professional globally. People hate internships. I've had experience where I work. We had an opportunity to provide paid internships for young people, and they didn't turn up
because there are excuses where the industry is far away from where I live, or this is not in my field, and so many excuses. But what is the role of volunteering? I know that there's a lot of volunteering opportunities in Europe. What is the role of volunteering and then internship in career development as a young person? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think that it is one of the most underappreciated ways of starting in an industry, and at the same time one of the most saturated, especially in terms of internships.
Yes.
Those are just as hard to get as any job position in my opinion. But it also gives you all the skills that you need. Like there is some internships that provide you with more skills than others, definitely. So it's also looking like for the right opportunity for you, but definitely it's the best way to meet people, in my opinion. It's, for example, even the process of applying for an internship. Like I once applied for an internship at a company and I went through 4 rounds of interviews. I did end up getting
4 rounds for an internship.
Exactly.
Wow, that's intense.
And one of the rounds was even with the CEO of the company.
Wow.
Imagine how strict they were doing.
Wow.
And it was just the internships.
Wow.
Yeah. But because of that, I was able to connect with the recruiter that was handling the job position, and we ended up finding out that we went to the same university, that we had a lot of people in common, and we're still in contact. And because of him, I've been able to find other opportunities where he has developed in his career, in other companies and everything.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's even going through the process, even if you want to face rejection, even if at the last minute you realize that the opportunity is not for you, it first of all lets you meet people.
Yes.
And then if you actually do get the internship, it's the best way to learn everything, because no one expects an intern to be perfect.
Of course.
It's
that's
your
the
chance
best
to
way.
make mistakes. Exactly. It's the best way. It's your chance to make mistakes. It's your chance to mess up, because you're not like the heart of the operations yet. So you're learning how to be the heart of that operation, So definitely, especially volunteering, it's like a way to showing your commitment, a way to showing that it is an area that you're very willing and very excited to explore. Exactly. So
Of course.
Yeah.
And then I have a question about tech and AI for young people, right? And how we use it in our professional lives or professional pathway, right? You mentioned social media. You mentioned a few places like companies' websites, and you mentioned tailoring your CVs to fit these job openings and job opportunities. People now in the wake of AI will just slap their CVs in an AI platform and then say, make me a CV to apply to this job. It makes the job easier. And young people nowadays are falling on AI for a lot of things, are falling on tech revolution for a lot of things. How should we position ourselves in the wake of AI as young people to attain global opportunities? Let me put it that way.
Of course. I mean, I'm all for using AI, especially when tailoring your CV, because a lot of the job postings are also kind of tricky with the language that they use. That if you haven't been working for very long, you might not be aware of certain nuances that they put in, like certain tricks, like how to spot if the job is well paid, how to spot if it's high stress environment, for example. So using AI is like, I've used AI to scan some of these job postings, and they have raised some red flags, some very good green flags as well. So that's one of the ways of incorporating AI, helping you understand the job position and then tailoring your CV for it. But of course, a lot of companies are now filtering for AI on their CVs. So of course, when you're first starting out in the industry, you do want a CV that stands out for the right reasons. Yeah. Right? So using AI in everything might not be the best pathway, because you want to give it a personal touch, because you might not be applying to 2,000 opportunities at the same time. You're like basically being, choosing what's best for you, and being very picky. I don't want to say picky, but at the same time, it's the best way to basically make sure that you're getting what you want, choosing what you want,
Amazing. And I hear you on that, because I know people, and I'm in my position now, I review so many applications, and you could tell who just slapped it on an AI to kind of develop something, and who actually, even if they used AI, who actually took their time to go through and be diligent about their applications. Now I want to ask you a series of questions that I know a lot of young people would want to know. You are such a young person, but you've gotten the opportunity to work in one of the biggest corporations in the world, right? And how does that feel? Does that put any pressure on you? For instance, working for a company like that will have even, I mean, for me, it was like everybody back home was like, oh, wow, you're working. Yeah, you're working for such a company. And at your age, I mean, are there any pressures that bring for yourself to deliver certain goals or certain outputs? And are there any pressure that brings socially, like people outside of the company themselves or in your social group expect something from you, like maybe, oh, you've made it, you're in this company, and so how tell me about it. How do you like see that situation? Yeah,
Of course. I mean, it's sort of like at some point I felt like I peaked, right? Like that was my peak, and that there was basically only coming down from there, which is very. I mean, it's not a nice thing to think, especially because I'm very young. You know, I still have my full life ahead of me.
Yes.
You know. But it did put some pressure because, of course, there's also this expectation like, oh, my God, they got into this big multinational corporation. Of course, from there, she'll be employable for the rest of her life, I've heard, right?
Tell me about it when you live in Germany.
Yeah. Yeah, it's. I mean, you can definitely feel the stress. You can definitely feel the pressure.
Stress as a young person in that situation. And how do you deal with such pressure? How do you, I mean, mentally... how do you... I remember we had a conversation and I told you, I mean, I don't celebrate my birthday. Then you made a comment that, okay, you were being a 75-year-old when you were 15, right? Sometimes because you're a young person and you're put in certain positions, you have to grow up. How do you handle such pressures where, of course, you have to be a young person, but then you have to also act in a certain way that makes you suited for the kind of position that you're in at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I have heard the most is basically a lot of questions on how I'm able to handle that stress as a young person. But what I have always prioritized is always having some sort of whimsy in my life.
Of course.
Yeah. Because it has really helped me navigate those types of pressure, you know, reminding myself that, yes, like this job position at this multinational corporation gave me a lot of skills and it gave me a lot of opportunities going forward. But at the same time, I have the time and I have the energy to explore other alternatives, to be basically risky with everything that I decide.
Yeah.
Because at the end, I still have a full life to rebuild anything that I might lose during this period of time, right? That's something that comes with a lot of job listings, that are a lot of opportunities to moving abroad, a lot of opportunities anywhere, you know, that there's always a chance that it might not work out. But when you're a young person, you're able to take those chances more freely because seriously, you can
bounce back, you still have
so
time.
Easily, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
We are coming to the closing moments of our interview, but I want you to kind of give like a pathway to young people, especially living in Ghana. I set this example that there are people living in Ghana that have not had the opportunity to even travel outside of their region, right? So there are like 16 regions in Ghana, and some people have not even gotten the opportunity to travel outside of the region, let alone traveling outside of the country. And we want to present the show as an avenue where people can be inspired to leave their comfort zone as young people and experiment and find opportunities, fail, but then bounce back, right? And then build. So I want you to kind of give us an advice of a sort to young people now. What should be their plan? What should be their roadmap to getting opportunities globally, right? Just give us it will differ from young person to young person, but we've seen your journey. So give us a roadmap as a young person. What should I do to garner opportunities globally?
I am the type of person that says that there's nothing quite like your home country. There's nothing quite like your home, because that's where you'll find most of the opportunities, right? Or at least you'll see in the long run that a lot of the opportunities you take always relate back to your home, to your experiences growing up, because it made you who you are.
Yeah.
Right? So if you haven't had the opportunity to travel, if you haven't had the opportunity to go abroad, and you still have this idea that there's something abroad that's better than what can be offered within your own space, then it's I would suggest, like, first changing that mindset. You know, your own space, your own home has so much potential. You know, now everything is digital. There's so many different companies looking for remote positions. You know, there's so many there's so many different ways of making your own company at home, you know, making your own startup. You know, there's just the step that you have to take, the very scary step, which is to start. You know, it starts with a decision. It starts with a first interaction with what you want to do, and then you will see that there's a sea of opportunities. You know, find an issue that you want to solve in your own community, find someone you want to help, someone you want to approach, because one way or another you'll see that this applies everywhere. You know.
I mean, I've lived in Germany and I've lived in Ghana, and the problems we have here and complain about, those are like the same problems people have and complain about in Germany. And so, I mean, you can still be here and find problems that are globally relevant, and you can apply that globally to even start something. And then that will be your gateway even to get opportunities globally. So, Mariana, you're welcome to Ghana. We know you don't live here, and we are concluding the interview. Tell us, this is Heritage Month in Ghana, and then on Z we are celebrating Heritage Month because March is the month that we gain our independence as a country. Tell us your experience so far since you've been to Ghana, and tell us what you love most so far since you've been here.
I mean, what I love most, of course, that's easy, the food so far. You know, I really enjoyed all of the dishes that I've tried, especially fufu, for example.
Fufu,
that was delicious, right? Yeah, but I think that I have been very lucky to be able to come during March, especially to see this Heritage Month, because when I was younger, I read about the culture in Ghana because of a book that told about how, you know, how Ghana was colonized and then how they gained independence. And it was a novel that I really enjoyed. And now seeing it in person has been amazing, especially because I see how many things Ghana has to offer to the world, and how the culture is so unique, and how basically we can all learn something from Ghana in one way or another. And I am taking so much with me on this trip.
Amazing. And we really, really appreciate you for coming to see the beautiful things we have in Ghana. Today, the show was streamed live on YouTube, so you can go to YouTube on Z Multimedia to stream it live. And we are happy that you joined the show today. Mariana, do you have any last words for us before we close the show?
Yes, I just want to tell you what a beautiful country you have, that seriously, the world is your own, and it starts with Ghana in your case, you know. And honestly, to just appreciate life and never give in to the pressures of needing to be perfect. You know, you make your own way, you make your own path, you find your own opportunities. And honestly, failure is just a way to learn about your mistakes.
Thank you, and young people across Ghana who are tuned in to Z 101.9 FM Next Gen Connect. We brought you this amazing interview with Mariana. And thank you for tuning in. Up next on Z is Highway 1019 with Richard Sticks. And we are out of here today.